They said I didn't belong here, that war had no place for women. But when the gunfire started, no one cared about gender, only who would stand their ground. That night, under the smoke and the blood, they called me Commander. Not the woman, not the first, just Commander. My name is Grace Taylor. I'm 30 years old, a U.S. Navy SEAL officer. 7 years ago, I stepped onto the sand at Coronado for the first time, the only woman among 100 men. The smell of salt, diesel, and sweat hit me like a wall. Voices followed me everywhere. She's here to fill a quota. She won't last a week. Watch. She'll quit before dawn. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. In this place, silence was its own kind of weapon. I'd learned early that proving yourself wasn't about talking louder. It was about lasting longer. The instructors didn't treat me differently. They didn't need to. The others did it for them. Every task was heavier when I carried it. Every order second-guessed when I gave it. Even when I outperformed them, the air filled with quiet resentment instead of respect. At night, I lay awake listening to the waves crash against the shore. The ocean didn't care that I was a woman. It only cared if I could survive it. And that, somehow, made it easier. Johnson once said, "You think being here makes you special?" I looked at him, exhausted, my voice barely steady. No, I think being here means I stopped waiting for permission. He didn't have a comeback. But the smirk he always carried, it faded that night. The next morning I was up before dawn. The sand was cold beneath my boots, the sky bruised with the first light of day. I tied my hair back and thought, if I'm going to break, it won't be today. They kept pushing, testing, doubting. But for every sneer, every whispered joke, I built something harder, sharper, like steel forged in salt water. I didn't come here to prove that a woman could do it. I came here because I refused to let fear decide what I couldn't. Every bruise, every blister, every breath in that freezing surf, they were all building something inside me. And somewhere between the pain and the silence, I started to believe it too. That maybe one day they wouldn't see the woman who tried. They'd see the SEAL who never stopped. The first weeks were the hardest. Not because of the pain, I was ready for that, but because of the silence. The kind that followed me everywhere, in the mess hall, in the barracks, on the training field. It wasn't hostility anymore. It was distance. They talked to each other, laughed, cursed, joked. But when I walked by, the air shifted. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks clinked against metal trays. Someone always muttered, "She doesn't belong here." I tried not to care. I told myself numbers don't lie. My scores were in the top 5%. Faster runs, longer dives, sharper shots. But the truth was cruel. Performance didn't equal belonging. They didn't see a teammate. They saw a statement. A political experiment wrapped in a uniform. Thompson made it clear one morning during tactical drills. He was team leader. I was supposed to handle overwatch. I suggested a flanking maneuver, quiet, efficient. He laughed. "You think this is a movie, Taylor? Stick to the plan." I said nothing. Orders were orders. Minutes later, the team walked straight into a mock ambush. Paint rounds exploded around us, red splatters on desert sand. Thompson cursed through his helmet. The instructor yelled about lack of coordination, but everyone's eyes turned to me. I wanted to shout that I had warned them, that I could have saved the drill, saved their pride. But I bit my tongue, because in this world, being right didn't matter if no one wanted to listen. That night, I sat on the pier alone, boots soaked, watching the tide move like something alive, endless, indifferent. For the first time, I felt the real weight of isolation, not from the ocean, but from the people standing next to me every day. I realized strength wasn't enough. You could be the fastest, the strongest, the toughest. But until they trusted you, you were still just the outsider. So I made myself a promise. I wouldn't fight them with words or pride. I'd fight with actions. I'd earn every inch of ground they tried to take from me, not for approval, not for revenge, but because I needed them to understand. I wasn't there to fit in. I was there to lead. Hell Week. The name alone felt like a warning, and still, nothing could have prepared me for it. 5 days, 4 hours of sleep, cold mud in every pore, salt water burning every cut. Orders screamed until your mind blurred into static. Out here, no one cared who you were, only whether you could still move when your body begged to stop. The air reeked of sweat, diesel, and desperation. Voices cracked, hands bled. Men who looked invincible just days before now trembled under the weight of exhaustion. Even the ones who mocked me didn't have the energy to sneer anymore. Hell Week stripped all of us bare. Rank, gender, ego, gone. Only survival was left. By the third night, it felt like time had stopped. The ocean roared louder than thought itself. We carried a log the size of a telephone pole across the dunes. 6 of us, shoulders raw, backs screaming. I remember the sand shifting under my boots, the log pressing into my bones. Rodriguez stumbled. His knees buckled. The log rolled, and for a split second, it was heading straight for Johnson's leg. Instinct took over. I dropped my pack, threw my shoulder under the weight, and pushed back. Pain exploded through my spine, white, sharp, clean. Rodriguez gasped. Half conscious, I shouted, "On your feet! Come on, I've got it!" He blinked, dazed, then leaned in, taking back the weight with a groan. The instructor barked something distant, his voice swallowed by the surf. I didn't hear him. All I heard was the collective breath of the team as the log steadied again. We moved together this time, uneven, but united. When we reached the end of the course, everyone collapsed into the mud. No one spoke. Then Rodriguez looked at me, not with pity, not with surprise, but something new. Respect. He muttered, "You just saved his damn leg." Johnson didn't say a word, but when he passed me a canteen, our eyes met. And for once, there was no resentment there, just exhaustion. And maybe gratitude. That night, lying on the cold sand, I realized something had shifted. Not just in them, in me. I wasn't running alone anymore. For the first time, I wasn't fighting to be seen. I was simply part of the fight. The ocean was black that night, endless, merciless. They called it surf torture, but to me, it felt more like a negotiation between body and soul. The instructors made us lock arms, lying flat in the freezing surf as the tide crashed over our faces. Every wave hit like a hammer, sucking the breath from our lungs. We weren't allowed to move, only endure. Thompson was next to me. He'd been quiet for hours, too proud to show weakness, until his body finally betrayed him. A sudden jolt. His leg seized, his grip slipped. He gasped, swallowed water, and disappeared under the foam. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then I did. I yanked free from the chain of arms and dove. The water was heavy, punishing. I reached him just as another wave hit, dragging us both under. I kicked hard, grabbed his collar, and pulled him toward the shore. When we finally broke through the surf, he coughed violently, eyes wide, shivering uncontrollably. "Why?" he rasped. "Why'd you come back?" I was shaking too, teeth chattering, but I forced the words out. "Because we're a team," I said, "and teams don't leave anyone behind." The instructors didn't say a thing, but when we rejoined the line, no one looked at me the same way again. No smirks, no whispers, just quiet. The kind of quiet that means something's changed. From that night on, Thompson stopped calling me Princess. He called me Taylor. And when we ran, he matched my pace. A few days later came the final trial. Night navigation. A map, a compass, no moon. Half the team was lost before we even started. But I remembered what my father used to say when we'd lie on the roof back home. The stars are the oldest map you'll ever need. So I looked up. The North Star was faint behind a veil of cloud, but it was there, steady, patient. I guided them through the swamp by starlight, step by step, until we found the checkpoint marker just before dawn. When the last whistle blew, Hell Week was over. 6 of us remained. I could barely stand, but I smiled anyway, because for the first time, I wasn't the girl trying to be a SEAL. I was a SEAL. At graduation, the commander called my name. I walked forward, saluted, and he pinned the trident on my uniform. It was heavier than I expected. Cold metal, warm pride. I looked down at it, and my voice trembled when I whispered, "I didn't need anyone to open the door for me. I broke it down myself." The room went silent. Then one by one they started clapping. And in that sound, I heard everything I had fought for: respect, belonging, and a place no one could ever take back. Afghanistan wasn't training anymore. The silence there felt older, heavier, as if the land itself waited for something to break. It was my first deployment, my first time leading a team under fire. And of all people, my unit included Johnson and Thompson, the same men who once laughed at the idea of taking orders from me. We were sent into the mountains on reconnaissance. The plan was simple on paper: observe, report, withdraw before dawn. But paper doesn't bleed. By dusk, the air was thin, the cliffs sharp as knives. Halfway through the valley, Johnson's whisper cut through the radio. "Movement ahead, 2 o'clock, possible ambush." The standard order was to retreat and wait for air support. But I knew if we waited, we'd be trapped. Then I saw it. A goat path, barely visible, curling down the mountainside. Locals used it. It wasn't on the map. "New route," I said. "We take the trail." Thompson snapped back, "That's off limits. Command said hold." I met his glare. "Command isn't here. Move." The first shot cracked before he could answer. The ridge exploded with gunfire, dirt spraying in all directions. We dropped low, returned fire, and I dragged Rodriguez to cover when he stumbled. "Go!" I yelled. "Down the path!" No one argued this time. We ran through smoke and dust, the trail twisting beneath the mountain's shadow. When we reached the riverbed, the shooting stopped. We were alive, all of us. For a long moment, there was only breathing and the distant echo of gunfire. Then Thompson looked at me, voice rough but steady. "You were right, Commander." It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. In that small silence, something shifted. Respect, not demanded, not given, but earned, the only way it ever truly could be. The call came a year after Afghanistan. I was told to pack my gear and report to Rhode Island, the Naval War College. 3 years of study, strategy, and silence that felt almost foreign after years of gunfire. There were no explosions here, only minds colliding. Theories, simulations, leadership psychology. They weren't testing how much pain I could take anymore. They were testing how much wisdom I could carry. I learned that war wasn't only about who shoots first, but who decides when to shoot. About the weight of a command, how one word could save lives or end them. When I graduated, I was promoted to lieutenant commander, then assigned as executive officer of SEAL Team 7. Different kind of battlefield, same pressure. Every decision now had names attached to it. Men who trusted me to bring them home. The first weeks were awkward. Some of the younger operators had heard the stories. The first woman SEAL commander. They watched me like a myth that had somehow become real. Others waited for me to fail quietly, so I led the only way I knew how, through discipline and clarity. But this time, I added something I once thought was weakness. Listening. I asked for their input, not because I doubted myself, but because respect grows faster when it's shared. Johnson once said during a briefing, "Ma'am, you sure about this insertion route?" I looked him straight in the eye. Convince me otherwise. He did, and he was right. That night's mission went perfectly, not because I commanded, but because we decided together. Slowly, things began to change. The unit stopped seeing me as the woman officer. They started seeing me as their XO, the one who could anticipate problems before they happened, the one who didn't lose her calm when plans went sideways. Leadership, I realized, wasn't about shouting the loudest or being the first through the door. It was about creating silence in chaos, enough for others to breathe, think, and act. One evening, after a long training op, Thompson walked past my office. He paused, then said quietly, "The team trusts you, Commander, even the new guys." I smiled. "Good," I said. "Then we're ready for whatever comes next." And for the first time in years, I didn't have to prove anything. I just had to lead. And they followed. The day they handed me command of SEAL Team 7, the room went silent. I could feel it. The weight of history pressing against my shoulders, the whispers that followed me down every hallway. The first woman to lead a SEAL team. It sounded like a headline, not a command. But to me, it wasn't about being first. It was about being ready. Our next deployment came fast. A joint counter-terror operation in East Africa. 4 nations, one objective: dismantle a network that had been moving weapons across borders. American SEALs, British SAS, French commandos, and Kenyan Rangers, each with their own pride, their own rules. And among them, one man who made his skepticism impossible to miss: Colonel Brighton, SAS commander. During our first briefing, he didn't even look at me. "Your team will handle support," he said curtly, eyes fixed on the map. I replied calmly, "My team leads insertion. Your unit provides overwatch." His jaw tightened. "With respect, Commander, this isn't a training field." I smiled slightly. "Neither is mine." After that, I stopped talking. No debates, no defense, just results. We launched at dawn, 4 simultaneous raids in 2 countries. The plan hinged on coordination, precise timing, and a bit of faith. I split the American teams to support French and Kenyan units, ensuring no one operated blind. When comms failed mid-operation, I rerouted drone intel through backup frequencies I'd set up hours before. By nightfall, the network's leaders were captured. No civilian casualties, no friendly fire. Back at base, the air was thick with relief and disbelief. Reports came in one after another. Every strike clean, every team accounted for. Brighton walked toward me slowly, his expression unreadable. For a moment, I thought he might try to justify his doubt. Instead, he said, "Your timing saved half my men today." I met his eyes. Next time, Colonel, maybe start with trust. He gave a short nod. Maybe I will. That night, as the camp quieted under the African sky, I looked at the map spread before me. Lines of borders, marks of nations, all crossed by the same purpose. And I realized I no longer needed to prove myself to anyone. Not to the men beside me, not to the headlines waiting back home. Victory had already spoken. And it said everything I never had to. Operation Thunderstrike was the longest night I ever commanded. From the war room, the map looked like a living web. Raids happening at once, threads pulled across borders, across time zones, voices on the radios, the steady hum of logistics, the tiny sounds that mean everything is still holding together. When the first alert from Yemen hit my screen, my chest went cold. Johnson, the same man who'd mocked me on the beach, was leading a team that had moved into a trap. Intel was thin. They were pinned. Time was shrinking like a fist. There was a calm voice from higher up. Hold to the plan, no unilateral action. Safe on paper. Deadly, sometimes in reality. I looked at the coordinates. I looked at Johnson's feed. I thought of every person who trusted my call. And I decided to break the rule. Not loudly, not out of defiance. Quietly, precisely, like a surgeon making an incision. I authorized an emergency strike, a corridor for Johnson to withdraw, and a simultaneous seal on the high-value target. That night, the world moved like clockwork. 47 strikes. 12 countries. 1,000 decisions compressed into a few sharp minutes. We intercepted 3 planned attacks before they began. When Johnson's voice came over the net, raw with relief, he said, "Target taken alive, no casualties." Something heavy in me, something always braced for the worst, exhaled. When they returned, he walked into the operations tent, eyes rimmed with fatigue. He looked at me, and his voice broke. "You're more than a commander. You're the one we trust with our lives." There was no theater in it, no bravado. Just a man saying the thing that means everything. On the flight home, I stared at the map below. Lights like healed wounds across the dark. I thought about being the only woman on the sand. About Hell Week and the nights I asked myself whether to keep going. Now I wasn't the lone figure anymore. I was one of them. One of the people who would die for the person beside them. And that, finally, was the victory that mattered. I used to be the only one. Now I am a part of a unit that will die for each other. That is the real triumph.